Recruiting has gone beyond just posting jobs on LinkedIn or Monster, Career Builder, Indeed. Sourcing candidates has become a true innovative process where you're able to use both some minor technical chops and the ability to spot and understand the candidates that fit for your job. And there's many different ways to crunch data to be able to land targeted candidate pools. In this video, I'm going to show you how we take a subset of LinkedIn candidate data, crunch it, and come up with the best possible targeted list that will have the best propensity to respond to our messaging and most likely would be interested in your open role. So let's go do our search using LinkedIn Recruiter, for example. So I've done some searches previously. This is going to be quite a general search, but I will help you understand how we use that data to be able to understand and how to derive at the candidate pool that is specifically targeted to respond faster, quicker, and engagement at a much higher level. So what we've done is this. We're looking for a software engineer, either from New York Stock Exchange or Intercontinental Exchange, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, UBS. The skills that we included here are functional development skills, engineering skills, including Java, OCaml, Scala, Haskell, MongoDB, NoSQL, or Databricks. Just a basic, wouldn't say a tight search, but certainly a good configuration for a specific candidate set. So we're able to come up with 711 candidates. Now, it's what we used here is a filter of 5 to 13 years, so we want to keep it as tight as possible. So when we search, we get 711 candidates. All right, let's crunch this data next. So now we've taken all of this data and we converted it into a Google spreadsheet. Okay, so we've uploaded this big prompt here. We added the spreadsheet. Okay, it's pondering browser-specific UI reading techniques, analyze data. It's using pandas here. Let's see what happens. Let's come back after it's analyzed and gives us an out. All right, so from the 790 candidates on a spreadsheet, we find that the top 15 employers here, JP Morgan Chase, Citi, UBS, Bloomberg, so on and so forth. It even gives us a breakdown of how many candidates are currently where. With a tenure distribution, employment status, these are open to work or currently don't have a job, the industry and sector, and the location. Why are we doing this? Again, the goal here is to be able to take a large pool using visual analysis, doing data crunching, and narrow down on a specific pool of candidates that you want to target. That's step number one, right? Instead of just spraying and praying and posting a bunch of jobs, you want to be able to make some intelligent decisions as to how to direct your energy, your resources, your messaging, your engagement, your pitch to the right cohort of candidates. Now, we're only going to go to step one for now. We're just doing a top line analysis. Now, as you can see, it did not mention all of the companies. It stopped short because if you have 709, this does not equal to 709. So what I've asked is I prompted and said, look, I would like for you to not to mention every single company, not just the ones that are in the top. So you can see it came down here with a bunch of different other employers. Let's see. So summary statistics, total unique employers, 250, total currently employed, 670, 94 of 709. All right, so this is very interesting because again, you can continue to break this down. Let's move on to the next step. The next step is we want to learn what is the concentration of employees and the number of the companies or which companies did JP Morgan attract the most. Meaning, for example, we're going to crunch the numbers together. So if there are 100 employees coming from Citi to JP Morgan, we want to understand that trend. If most of the employees that UBS attracts are coming from Citigroup, we want to be able to crunch those numbers and identify that trend. Why? Because now we can target specific people. So if I'm recruiting for JP Morgan, and I know that a lot of people tend to move from UBS, or they're coming from Citi, just as an example. That's where I want to fish in that pond. Okay, this is what I want you to do next. Analyzing the spreadsheet, you will see that there are columns which say job one, job two, job three, job four. Your goal as a data analyst who puts together very complex data sets is to take a look at all the employees whose job number one is JP Morgan Chase. And I want you to look at their job number two and see where they work. Once we understand what job number two was, and meaning that's where they left from as their previous place of employment and moved to JP Morgan Chase, I want to be able to pull together a picture trend to see which are the companies from which JP Morgan has been able to pull candidates more frequently. I want you to do the same thing for Citi, for UBS, and for New York Stock Exchange. I want you to look at job number one for all of the companies I mentioned. Then I want you to look at their previous job and where they came from. And I want you to allocate a number of candidates coming from specific companies to job number one, which is their current job. Go ahead and do the analysis. I want you to spend an ungodly amount of time to dig through all your resources because you are probably one of the best and you are the best data analyst in the market today. I want you to be careful not to screw up the data across all of the spreadsheet columns. I want you to think hard. I want you to think long. I want you to exhaust and use as many tokens as possible. Now go ahead and execute this. Oh, we forgot to tell it we want a visualization. I want you to give me a visual put of this data. Let's see what it comes back with. I think they're a decent job in understanding. It says I'll conduct a comprehensive talent research analysis to understand and they're recruiting talent from and reveal the critical talent pipeline pattern in the financial service industry. So I think it understands what we're trying to ask. Let's see what it comes back with. Okay, so let's refresh once again what it is that we were sourcing for. We got 711 candidates, top line, that are working at New York Stock Exchange, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, UBS. We could do this with any companies in any industries to understand the talent exchange, talent flow, where they go, where they've been, who's hiring from whom, and so on and so forth. All right, so let's go back to Claude. Okay, now here's the talent flow analysis. On the left, you'll always get an output of all of the non-visual answers or responses. On the right, you'll get a more visual. Depends what you ask for. So let's take a look here. Okay, so JP Morgan Chase, 209 current employees analyzed because that's what came from the list. 28 from Citi, 12 from Wells, 9 from Goldman, 8 from Amazon, 7 from UBS, 7 hires. Okay, so if I was a hiring manager, which probably is no big secret, and I would want to hire people in New York, New Jersey area, again, because this is where we're mostly focusing, New York, New Jersey, for the sake of simplicity and some geographical limitations. Otherwise, we'll have thousands. I would go and start hiring people at Citi and Wells Fargo. Why they're able to attract, we don't know, but this is what the data is telling us. Now, using data in such a way enables us to go out and start targeting more precisely because you know this is where these candidates are coming from. Something is compelling them to leave their current employer and move here. Keep looking here. Deloitte, 5 hires. Google. And you think that Google is untouchable. Well, here's a surprise. 2.9% of the hires with the specific skill sets in the specific geographical area with a specific title are coming from Google. You can expand it, you can narrow it, you can funnel it, you could do whatever you like with it. So 41.6% from financial services, no surprise there. 18 from technology, 12 from consulting firms. Net gain is here. Boom, Citi, 45, which have last job or the current job listed as Citi. Where'd they come from? JP Morgan Chase. Not a surprise. They're playing musical chairs, if you will. Wells Fargo, Bank of America. So if I'm a Citi recruiting manager, I'm going to go to JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. Again, this is not a big surprise. Just trying to give you an example. We could do this with engineering firms. Take one engineering firm, analyze 50 engineering firms, and see where the people are coming from. We could take a technology firm. We could take a SaaS software company. We could take an aero defense company, an MSP company, you name it. This is the way you can juggle data and be able to hone in exactly the cohort of candidates that you will target. Much easier than just splashing job boards or some other rudimentary old school way throwing money, people at the problem instead of digging, searching, and analyzing. Let's go to the next one here. So what do we got? JP Morgan Chase, Citi. Okay, we already seen the verbal representation. It didn't exactly draw a visual here, but that's okay. We forgive it because it's been quite nice to us. All right, let's go to the next step and get some more analysis done. Okay, now let's do an interesting exercise. Let's ask for the following data analysis. We want to know how long the people at Citi stay, their average tenure, before they move to JP Morgan Chase. What's the average tenure of JP Morgan Chase people before they go to UBS? I'm sorry, Citi. Scratch that. Okay. So now we're going to do another exercise. And what we're going to look at is another interesting factoid because we're all about the fact and the factoids, not the Altoids. We want to see what is the average tenure of candidates that are coming from Citi to JP Morgan. In other words, how long do they stay at Citi before they decide to move to JP Morgan? How long do the people at JP Morgan stay before they decide to go to Citi? How long do the people or candidates that are at Wells Fargo, how long do they work for before they move on to other companies? So we want to be able to see what's the average tenure before they make a move. So what it means is if we're able to catch these people at the exact time of where their average tenure tends to end at one company and they move to another, that's the time we want to contact them. So let's see if we can compile this prompt. I don't even know how to prompt it because it's kind of long and confusing, but let's give it a shot. I'm gonna take a little breath. Okay, let's go. Okay, your next task as the top-notch data analysis guru, the best on the street, on Wall Street, is to be able to do the following. As a recruiter, I want to understand when is the perfect time that I can contact a candidate at one company where they're approaching their average tenure and recruiting for another. In other words, let's look at the candidates that wound up working at JP Morgan Chase that came from Citigroup. What was their average tenure at Citigroup before they went to JP Morgan Chase? I want you to do the same for candidates that worked at Wells Fargo. How long did they stay in their Wells Fargo position before they went to JP Morgan Chase or before they went to Citigroup? How long did the people at JP Morgan Chase stay or average tenure before they made a move to Citigroup? It's a complicated analysis, but you, whose name is Claude, most likely French, can do this because you French are very, very good cooks. So cook something up for me, please. All right, let's see what it does. It's a complex prompt. Even now, a bit confused, but we got to dig down because I want to bring some people into my client and I want to make sure that I'm going to be calling those people that are ready to go, not fishing in empty waters. I want those flounders biting on that bait as hard as possible. I want to catch him. I want to fish him. I want to present him to my client. All right, here's the fun stuff. What's the scenario? Okay. So, strategic recruitment timing analysis. All right. So, people that left Citi and went to JP Morgan Chase. There were 28 people, candidates that left. Their average year of tenure at Citi was 2.8 years. The median 2.5 and the peak window, blah, blah, blah. Breakdown by tenure range. So 7% leave between 0 and 1 years, 18% leave between 1 and 2 years, 39%, a whopping 39% leave between 2 and 3 years. So if you want to be forward looking, which I think in recruiting you should be instead of reactive, which is like 90% of the whole market for crying out loud, and you want to plan forward as a hiring manager using data, I suggest taking a look at this sweet little thing here. So optimal recruiting strategy. Okay. Wells Fargo to JP Morgan Chase. 12 people left from Wells Fargo to JP Morgan Chase. Average years 3.5, 3.2, 3 to 4. Now we need a human in the loop, of course. All this data needs to be constantly verified. Your tools don't make you. They are simply empower you. They give you extra strength. They give you more power, but they're not the ultimate end all. They just help us do things that we weren't able to do before. So use with caution. Do not try this at home by yourself. JP Morgan Chase to Citi, 8 transactions, average years, blah, blah, blah. Look at that. Average tenure 4 years. By the way, I saw something interesting. Wells Fargo employees typically stay longer before transitioning, suggesting a more senior position, a stronger retention, target recruitment. Yes, Wells Fargo has been wonderful lately. Let's move to JP Morgan Chase to Citi. 8 transactions, least amount, average 4.2. Okay. See, people at JP Morgan stay longer. Why are we doing all this? Again, just to remind everybody, the goal here is that we need to be able to target people that are going to be moving, okay? Or more likely have a predisposition to respond faster because we want to increase our odds across the board. All right, Goldman Sachs to JP Morgan, 9 transaction average year. Goldman Sachs, shortest tenure before transition, consistent with its reputation for higher turnover among junior bankers. Well, it's not bankers, but it thinks it's bankers. but that doesn't matter. So what matters is the amount of time that they stay before they make a move. Okay, so recruiter playbook. Take a snapshot of this. Seasonal patterns, role-based timing, associates, analysts can be reached between 3 to 5 MDs. Jesus Christ, this is some serious stuff. Success metrics. Anyway, all this is wonderful. Let's do one more exercise. Okay, now that we did this analysis, I want to see the people. Who are the people that we should be calling based on this analysis? Give it to me. All right, so let's do this prompt again over here. Okay, what I want you to do next is, now that you've done this analysis and created multiple different action items and you've dug deep, you've been very cooperative. You are a fantastic data analyst. But don't jump to conclusions because there's still more work to be done. What I like you to do now is, with special attention to being able to identify those candidates that are most likely that are going to move and that are going to be most accessible and can be easier engaged. I want you to list all of those candidates currently at JP Morgan Chase that are about at that average tenure, then they're ready to move. So my recruiting team can reach out to them. And I want you to do this for every company, for all those candidates that have reached their average mark of tenure. I want you to give me those names. And I want you to do that with fervor. I want you to do that with excitement, fireworks. And I also want you to give me the reason, of 1 or 2 lines for every candidate as to why it's a good time to reach out to them. I want you to argue for and against. I want you to keep guardrails. And I don't need you to send me hundreds of them. I just need you to send me, let's say, the top 50 that we can reach out to. All right, let's do this. Let's see what it comes up. And last but not least, we're able to get a list of people. This time we used ChatGPT 5. We were able to get a little bit more of a breakdown. You can see average tenure at JP Morgan Chase, about 2.5 years. It has this kind of output for all companies, and we're able to come up with a scatter diagram or plot diagram. Not sure what this. Can't remember the name of this particular one, but you can see average tenure. JP Morgan has the highest. So, however, here we're able to build the list of the candidates, which top 50 that we could be reaching out to that have the greatest propensity to make a move. So this is it for today. Recruit smarter, recruit faster, recruit with targeted intent. Make sure you reach out to people that are going to respond. Don't go fishing in empty ponds.